Hi, I'm Grant Hocking with GeoSierra, and we're going to talk to you very briefly in this video about our technology of preventing liquefaction, that's soil liquefaction, during an earthquake. Now, what happens during an earthquake? Basically what happens is the earthquake happens and it sends out a pressure wave first, which has no energy, and you'll receive that early and you won't be able to feel it. And then along comes, at a later time, the shear wave, which will come along through the bedrock, and then it will propagate upwards through your soils into your foundation. Now, it's that upward propagating shear wave that basically shakes and loosens the sand. What happens is the sand particles, like my two fists here, and two sand grains, the upward propagating shear wave wobbles them around, and they try to contract on the water, on that little pore where the water is, and trying to compress the water. The water is incompressible, so the pore pressure, the water pressure rises, and the water pressure rises, it can't dissipate, and pushes my sands of grain apart, and basically my building is sitting on water, and that's why it topples over. Now, over 50 years ago, a guy called Leo Casagrande discovered electro-osmosis potential for stabilizing soils, and he showed it. This is full scale. They were done in World War II to start with, and then in the 50s and 60s in Canada and the United States. What happens, you put electrodes in the ground, and if you've got a slope and you apply a DC voltage, it can stabilize it, and it stabilizes immediately. Carl Terzaghi, who's the father of soil mechanics, is quoted in his book. He was standing there at the toe of a slope. It was failing, moving, and Casagrande threw the switch on the electrodes and it stabilized it instantaneously. And why this happens is when you put a DC voltage, that electric field is there instantaneously. And what it does is drive the water from the positive electrode to the negative electrode immediately. And so it drives the pore pressure down. So what we've done is develop this whole technology, which is proven for stability of soils for an earthquake. No one thought of it before, and it led to this development. So what we do is we put electrodes in the ground, and there's one here. This is a graphite electrode, and this is the connection, will go to the power supply. And these are buried in the ground beneath a structure, a slope, pipeline, or whatever, anything we're trying to protect. And these are connected to a power source. In this case will be a number of batteries, heavy-duty batteries, and connected to this panel. And what this panel has, it has a lot of switching gear, and this is a lot of energy, but it's only applied during the earthquake, so it's only applied for like about a minute to 2 minutes. And this switching gear will switch and energize these electrodes in the ground. And this will apply about 200 volts DC and 500 amps, enough to stabilize a fairly large structure. And this won't cause any personal harm. There's no potential for being electrocuted or anything like that. So there's no need to worry about that. So what happens is we have a three-axis accelerometer that measures the ground motion, and it is triggered by that first arrival before any damage happens at your site. And then it switches on all these electrodes in the ground are powered, and what happens is now driving the water to these negative electrodes. And what that means is the earthquake comes along, the upward propagating shear wave tries to liquefy your soil, but the electrodes are driving the water the other way, so it can't rise, it's being driven back down, and so the ground is stable, and you don't have any liquefaction. This whole technology is to retrofit existing structures. These electrodes can be placed in the ground just like your subsurface utilities are. Very straightforward, non-invasive, and so they can be put around an existing facility, and this panel just goes basically in the basement with the batteries, and so it's a very cheap way of stabilizing a system that would have enormous damage. I mean, the amount of the soils in the Los Angeles, San Francisco, and downtown Seattle area are very silty and applicable for this technology. So there's large areas of the western United States where this technology is directly applicable to retrofit and stabilize systems. So a system like this, basically very cheap, doesn't consume any energy except when the earthquake's there. And then it's just powered off and waiting for the next earthquake, and it'll be re-energized to stabilize the structure. And with this tool, there's no prediction involved. This tool will measure directly whether that site is applicable for this technology, and there's no guesswork. This quantifies directly that electro-osmosis will work. And you look at all the work of Casa Grande over the last 50 years, electro-osmosis is a very, very powerful system to stabilize soils. The thing is that no one thought about using it for earthquakes, and there is certain soils that won't work in. It won't work in all soils. It won't work in the real coarse, clean sands for sure. But all the soils in the western United States are very silty and directly applicable for this technology.